We're always thrilled to have him here. You guys know him as the manager of technical service at TravelCenters of America. Our good friend Kevin Lindsey joins us as he always does on Maintenance Matters. Hey, my friend, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Jimmy. How you doing?
Well, I mean, I got my phone master Dre back, and look, so our good friend Madison with a T, talk about being thrown into the cauldron, Kevin. She never produced the show by herself before without Dre here. So her first week of doing the show without Dre, she has to do it with me alone. I don't know if you know anything about me, but
Oh,
but dis,
oh,
but despite
oh.
despite my attitude on the air, I am about as cuddly as a cactus. So she managed to navigate that, and then it's like, oh, by the way, our first remote since going to the new platform, we went to TXTA. It's like you'll have to do that because Dre is in Sturgis rolling with chowder and motorcycles. So I'm a little, I'm pleased to have Dre back, but I got to tell you, Dre, careful, brother. Careful, brother.
Yeah.
She's got a lean and hungry look about her. You know what I'm saying? If she wasn't making movies, we'd be trying to steal her away. I'm
She's
telling
good
you.
at what she does and everything.
Yeah, she's good at everything she does. How are you doing? We've actually had so many like rumbling, bumbling conversations the last couple of weeks. It feels like it's this like we never get through the content because we're having too good of a time and we're getting into the weeds with a lot of stuff. But where did you want to pick up from where we last left off, and where do you want to go with this conversation today?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll start with what you just said. But see, I'm the kind of person I like getting off in the weeds because that's kind of where my life has always been. I live in that high grass. If I was a golfer, I would never be on the fairway. So that's just where I'm comfortable there. So I
By the
have
way,
no
you just
problem.
described Dave Nemo's career. We were laughing about that. Somebody said, well, it's really funny. My dad actually, he listens to the show. He's 82 years old. He gets up and he listens on a regular basis. And he actually asked me one time. He said, when Dave screws up and then seems to kind of extricate himself from the mess he's made with Grace, he said, I'm not sure anymore. He said, is he planning that, or is he simply the Phil Mickelson and the Arnold Palmer of radio? You, you know,
Right.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The
Hey, that's there's sometimes you gotta. It don't matter how consistent you are. It's just that you can consistently make a good shot from a bad landing,
yeah.
right? Sometimes, so.
Yeah, well, that's really, I mean, and that's the thing is like, Samuel L. Jackson was talking about golf one time, and he said it's a game of mistakes, and the game is to
Oh,
minimize your mistakes. He said you're going to make them. He said the question is, number one, how can you minimize them? One, and two, how can you recover from them? And
yeah.
there are people whose brains, and I have a feeling you're one of them, get incredibly more creative the deeper the weeds get, where you start having real fun because you have to focus on the problem at hand. When it's smooth sailing, people don't need you, Kevin. When things are going great,
That
it's like, I mean,
right, right. Yeah. And hey, I'm good with that too every now and then, right? So
yeah. Yeah, well, it means that people are coming in and getting in maintenance. And I kind of wanted to kind of let people know to kind of explain this. I mean, this is a show that we do deal with catastrophic problems. We do deal with stuff that goes really, really wrong. But the whole purpose of this show, as it was conceived by you guys when Dave and
yeah.
began to put this together, was the idea was we would talk about how do we not end up in the weeds. But if we do end up in the weeds, we've got to know the way out. And that's kind of the whole kind of dilemma of maintenance matters where,
Wow.
you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Well,
that's it.
what a great synopsis of everything we always talk about and do on here, right?
Oh, yeah, I actually, despite the fact that I seem to be making up as I go along too, as my dad says, are you making this up as you go along, or is there actually an outline of notes in front of you? People will never know except for Phone Master Dre,
uh,
Madison, and Dave,
uh,
who occasionally looks over the desk and looks at my
w-
notes.
okay. Okay, you made me think of something to get way off in the weeds here,
Go,
but
go.
I got to tell you this little story real
All
quick.
right,
When
go.
I was very young, I think I was 11 or 12 years old. My mom and dad had started this little restaurant business and stuff, but had a little country store or whatever with it. But part of the things he kind of peddled in there were T-shirts and stuff. This is back in the '70s, so you got all these strange T-shirts, people making T-shirts, pressing them, wanting you to sell them, but he had got this little rack of T-shirts, and I walked in there one day, and he reached and grabbed one and handed it to me. He said, "Here, boy, this one's you to a T." And I looked at it, and it was one of those old T-shirts, and it said, "If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bull." And
Uh,
I kind of took that to heart, and try, I have tried to make my career, my life, and everything, based off of that T-shirt. It feels like sometimes. So,
well, let me tell you something. And by the way, my dad told me this one time. One of the best pieces of advice he gave me about being in a classroom or being anywhere. He said, "Son, when you don't know what the hell is going on," he said, "that's when you really need to listen." And he said, "Make a point of anytime you hear anybody like bracket anything or put the quotes around it or frame it." He said, "Write that down, and then before they can ask you a question, raise your hand and ask a question about that, and the teacher will think, 'Oh yeah, he's on top of it. He's got it going
yeah,
on.'" I mean.
paying attention, right?
Paying
Paying
attention,
attention.
paying attention is really what it kind of comes down to. And once again, that kind of goes back to, as we've kind of been kind of unpacking this over the first couple of weeks of you and I doing this together, paying attention really is the game for maintenance matters, because you've got to pay attention. Okay, so they always say if you're tired, it's too late, and if you're thirsty, it's too late. There are certain sounds that
Yeah.
if you hear coming from your truck, it might be too late. So the game that we play here at Maintenance Matters is figuring out other signs that tell you maybe it's time to do that, and maybe even, I don't know, schedules that you honor where you go in and you get the maintenance that you need. And that is so much a part of it. I thought we'd also talk about, since we talked about Castrol last week, we've also been talking about radial tires. If either one of those things kind of piqued your interest about wrapping up, because we did get in the weeds on a couple of occasions. I had Brad Bentley asking you about your military service. We got all over the place. So I wanted to make sure there was nothing that we hadn't covered already that you'd like to kind of return to.
Well, I would say nothing in particular. But I agree. We did kind of get out there, but it's enjoyable. Yeah, I loved our discussion when Brad was on and stuff, and talking about some of that, because, and hopefully that can reach out and help others who are making that transition and stuff like that. Hopefully, so, because I know that's a big thing.
Yeah,
So,
and
uh,
I wanted to pivot one more time because actually there was a reason why I read we've talked about your military career, but I did want to give it a little bit of an overview because I wanted people to understand, and I feel like we missed that along with doing the work that you did in the Air Force with fixing stuff, you found out pretty early on you had an affinity for teaching people, teaching the airmen, teaching other people how to do this stuff as well. And I kind of wanted to ask you that question because one of the big things that comes up, we have a lot of drivers, a lot of listeners who have been on the road for a long time. It's why we do Education Station as well, who were
yeah.
thinking about becoming advisors, becoming trainers, maybe making the move to like a different sort of role in a shop or behind a desk. And I wanted to kind of ask you, when you were in the military, when they realized, because they often realize it before you do, that you had an affinity for not just diagnostic work, but actually training people in diagnostic work.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was actually in tech school, just after basic, you get done with basic and you go to your tech school. Well, I'm in tech school for general purpose vehicle mechanic, is what we called it at the time, and quite honestly, excuse me, but when I got done with tech school, I actually was an honor graduate, meaning my average was above everybody. I was top of the class or whatever. But I think they realized and they saw that I kind of started leading some study groups with some of the guys, because I had some previous experience before I went in. I just hadn't had the education. So I'm sitting in classes in tech school, and instructors are going over, how things work and what you do. And I've got these light bulbs that keep going off in my head. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And then they explain something, and I realize, that afternoon a group of us would get together and talk about some stuff in the class and try to get through some of it. And they're like, I'm not sure I understand this. So I kind of figured out a way to explain it to them, because I had already had that little epiphany of that light bulb going off, so it was interesting. But apparently they saw that, because when I graduated, they actually offered me a job to stay there and become an instructor immediately. I declined because I felt, I had went in the Air Force to go, join the Air Force, the military, to go see the world and to go do something. I really liked the thought of that, but I wasn't real crazy about where I was. I was in a little town called Rantoul, Illinois, Chanute Air Force Base at the time. It's kind of in the middle of a bunch of cornfields in nowhere, Illinois, off of I-57, and there's not much there. And I couldn't see myself just staying there, and not going anywhere else. So I declined that. But and they tried to get me to come back about a year later, but by that time I had actually met what became my wife of the last 39 years. So
Yeah,
I was like, no, not going back. So.
I got two funny stories for you that you will relate to immensely. Well, first of all, a lot of people often, boy, you hit the nail on that. A lot of people don't extend their stay in the military because they simply don't like where they're going to assign them next. And by the way,
Yeah.
once you've done your bit, and you, as an American citizen, I say, have a choice. You signed up for something, you honored your commitment, and you say, hey man, if you're sending me to Germany, let's go right now. If you're sending me to a cornfield in Illinois, I love Illinois and I love corn. I just don't want to be there for the rest of my life. I got two fun stories for you. The first of which is my grandfather was a pilot during World War II, and he was in the Army Corps. And it turned out that after a brief stint in combat, they were like, "Oh my God, you fly really well, but more importantly, you help your fellow pilots fly really well. You're going back to California right now, and you're training people on how to fly pilots." How to become pilots. And they sent him back, and somebody said, "Are you sorry to be out of the action?" He said, "I've seen enough. I got kids at home. I can't wait to get back to California. And then after that, I can't wait to bounce back home and do the thing." Because they figured out really early it was that one of his officers saw him talking to other pilots and giving them tips, and those tips paying off. That's how people often end up in that situation. The second story I have for you is I've only been given one game ball outside of Little League. In high school football, in my junior year in high school, I was given a game ball. I didn't play that good of a game. The reason I got the game ball was because a week earlier, I actually tutored the entire offensive line through a biology exam. And because I got them through the biology exam, two of them didn't miss a start, and the rest of them actually had their GPAs where they needed to be able to play. So the coaches said, because we have an offensive line, Jimmy Mack gets the game ball today. So you'd be surprised.
That's awesome.
You'd be surprised,
right.
and it was that same thing. It was a study group. I literally realized a couple of friends of mine were struggling, and I said, well, hey, I've kind of got this stuff down. And it started because one guy said, he goes, "I notice your grades are good, and you're as much of a cut up as the rest of us. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, come over and we'll figure it out." And then he came over and he did well on the next test. And then everybody else in the class figured out, you know what? We're going to go to your house. And I realize now that my mom is a saint. Can you imagine 5 offensive linemen on a high school football team going over to your mom's house, clean out your refrigerator? I mean,
I was just going to say, the peanut butter and crackers and anything else that was a snack around probably just disappeared.
Well,
right?
here's what's crazy, Kevin. I mean, and she's still with us as well, too. My mom is the kind of person that when she found out, oh, no, there was a table outside waiting for everybody with food all over it. She's like, if it's going to happen, I'm going to actually control the flow.
Control the situation, right?
I'm going to control the situation. She said, I'm not having these barbarians eat inside of my house. So she set up a real nice table, and she said, when y'all are finished studying, head out back. There's food waiting for you. So it was really well done. Okay, so as you kind of go through this, like I said, and we've talked about this before because there are people who do what you do and often find themselves either teaching or, as you are here on the show, doing a lot of forward-facing media work. How do you stay sharp on the equipment? How do you make sure that you are doing the work as well? The idea that it's like, there's always new technology coming in. Can you kind of talk to our listeners also about how you maintain proficiency on some of this stuff so that you can, in fact, teach whatever comes in new?
Yeah. I would, but I would start this by saying I don't feel like I stay that sharp or as sharp as I should on a lot of this because of the simple the mundaneness of the day-to-day process of everything that I do. But I do. I try to keep up by, reading what I can on new technology through, different trade magazines, things like that. I've got contacts with different OEMs, so I kind of try to stay in touch with them to understand, new things that are coming out, and just and then I try to dig in myself and just do my own, I guess, research and understanding how some of the new technology is working. Because I've always been one of those. You kind of have to understand how things work in order to help other people understand how they work, or how when X happens to it, here's why you have to do Y, right? You got to try to figure those things out, before all of a sudden it becomes a fire drill. If I can figure some of that out, by doing a little research, a little study, try to stay on top of new technologies and just the way that they work and work together with the truck and stuff. But if you're looking for anything specific for me to say to that, I really don't know how to say it, because it really does kind of depend on, I kind of go with the ebb and flow of the industry. We hear these problems. I hear customers talking about this. I hear technicians talking about, you've got this going on or that going on. And, quite honestly, I really started doing that a long time ago, because, I've been in this so long that I remember that transition from mechanical engines to electronic engines. And I saw a lot of, old school, really, really good mechanics, good technicians really struggle with the electronic side of it. And, I don't know. I just told myself, I'm not going to be that guy. I want to learn it and understand it, embrace it, and try to learn as much as I can about it. So, I've kind of always done that. And I guess by doing that early on, it became embedded in me, and that's just kind of what I started doing, and then trying to share that information as best I can, hopefully in ways that people understand.
Well, that's the other thing too.
I think that was why Homer Hogg and myself got along so well when we initially met, because I think we both realized we were just old country boys, and we could figure those things out, and we could figure out how to relate them to others, so that they could learn from it. So.
Yeah, that's the thing too about it, about the idea too, because one of the things, and since we're talking maintenance matters with our friend Kevin Lindsey, the other thing about maintenance too is the fact that often what you have to kind of get ahead of is when you start figuring out what new is coming into the industry. Madison, by the way, our producer who's here right now, she's a screenwriter. I've done a lot of playwriting in my life, and people have never heard of this, might not know what we're talking about, but you probably will in your own linguistic way. We call it the rule of three, that in order to actually have anything pay off in a screenplay, it's got to come up three times. You've got to set it up, explain it, and then deliver it. And it seems to me that if you're keeping your ear to the ground about what's coming next, diagnostically, maintenance-wise, that what you're preparing for is not so much how it works, although you should know that. It's almost like when you see something new that's being onboarded into the industry, into the truck, into the cab, your mind almost immediately has to go to, okay, so how is it going to break? And once it does, how are we going to fix it? But more importantly than that, how do we stop it from breaking? And so what I guess you said, particularly, you actually described it, Warren Buffett's haircut rule, the idea that every Tuesday Warren Buffett gets a haircut and it's all he does. What they leave out of that story is that he spends the entire day not talking to anybody and simply reading everything new that is coming across his desk. It's a day just for him. And I was kind of curious, my friend, if you have a day where you process, did I hear it three times? What else is coming up? Do you carve out space for yourself?
To be honest, I do try to, but quite honestly, I am not that good at that.
No, because people walk over to you, Kevin, and they say, Kevin, can you come take a look at this? That's your life, isn't it?
It is. It really is. But I like what you said there, that rule of three, because I kind of wanted to bump back to that, because that was actually that's always been kind of my cornerstone of actually doing any teaching or anything. And it actually came from the military. They kind of simplified it though. They used to say, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. Like, okay, I see what you're saying, but it's the same principle, right?
It is. It's the
By the
exact
time
same. It's
it really is.
Have you? Okay, so
And it works.
I'm gonna keep on referring to this movie over the course of the year, and once the year is up, people can get on my case about it. So we're 50 years outside of Jaws, and if you remember in the movie Jaws, Chief Brody on the boat knocks down the canisters full of gas, full of the diving tanks,
Hmm.
and Richard Dreyfuss's Hooper tells him, Martin, you got to be careful around these things; they will blow up. And then later on, as a fight breaks out, not a fight, but they're struggling with the shark, and the
Yeah,
tanks get knocked over, and one of them hits Brody in the head. That is the tank that at the end of the movie ends up blowing up the shark.
yeah,
If it had simply been at the end of the movie, we'd suddenly had this tank appear, we'd been like, that's ridiculous. But because it's been set there, we're able to kind of follow it. And it seems to
yeah.
me that in order to kind of stay ahead in trucking and in maintenance, you're like, a lot of people are talking about this new thing. Maybe I should learn about this new thing.
Hmm.
Maybe after learning about this new thing, I should figure out how this new thing works. And then finally, when it breaks, I know how to fix this new thing. Is that kind of messily the
It
pattern you end up following with new technologies?
it really is. It is. I mean, you just exposed my entire secret, Matt. That's all there is to it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Yeah, I'm actually going to defend you for a second. As I go back to Jaws, it's like that moment when Quint actually knows that his line is going to get tugged on before it gets tugged on. That slow look over. And the thing is, you can tell people that all you like, but here's the thing. The reason you have to fix stuff is because you've told people a dozen times, take care of the maintenance, and it still breaks down. I mean,
Yeah, that's
that's
right.
that's what it comes down to. How have you ever been able, when you deal with somebody who always has stuff that they don't do the maintenance for? Like I said, stuff often breaks because bad things happen, and we get that. But stuff often goes wrong because people don't do the upkeep and care. Have you ever gotten through to a client and said, "Look, I love your business, but this is going to keep happening unless you do this kind of stuff," and then they finally did it? Am I making sense there, Kevin?
Yeah, yeah, no, you are, and I have. I can't guarantee I've done that, in my career here at TA, but I have done that in my career. I've had those conversations with customers, seeing a pattern, and explaining to them, here's why this is happening. If you do this, it may alleviate some of this. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. One of the biggest things in our industry that came about back in 2007 was DPFs and regens. It was so much no one knew about it. That's always one of those instances that I draw from. When I stop and think about this, because I can't tell you how many conversations I had with different customers back then. And honestly, even technicians, service managers, not only at the dealership I was at, but, at other places, hey, here's what's going to happen if you keep doing it this way. I said, what you've got to do is you've got to train these drivers how to drive this and what to do when these things happen. That way you don't end up broke down on the side of the road, getting towed in, and all it needs is a regen. I mean, that's one of the best examples I could probably give. But those things still happen today, and a lot of it's just from not paying attention to those little things. So.
We only got a couple of minutes left here. Good God Almighty, I can't believe how fast that went by. It's always love hanging out with you. In regards to what are you looking at next? I mean, like I said, there's nothing in particular. If things are kind of settling, is there anything that you're starting to notice in regards to what the next big thing in regards to maintenance, in regards to any new technologies or stuff that you're noticing because of weather changes, anything like that?
Well, no, I would really say, as far as the new technologies go, which is not new. There's so much of the stuff we talk about is new technology, but Like the driver assistance systems, the ADAS systems, different things like that. But the biggest portion of those systems and how they operate has been out there for 20, 25 years in some cases already, within the industry. It's just a lot of the technology has finally, the computer technology side of that, on trucks finally caught up with where it needed to be for these things to be put into place and work properly. But another one that's out there is kind of, it's what I always call predictive maintenance, because I guess it's probably been, well over 10 years, probably 15 years ago, close to 15 years ago now. Most OEMs with new trucks started with the GPSs in them that actually, whether it's different names for it, but there's onboard diagnostics built in, and it sends this information to a cloud, whatever company it is, whatever cellular unit or satellite unit, whatever it is using it, but that information is stored on that cloud, and then through technology and going through the data that's there, hey, we see this trend happening with your truck, or hey, this could cause this particular code or this situation to occur, and then send an email. Those things have been out there for a while, but actually I see that coming to really change the way we look at maintenance in trucking. I'm starting to see, there's more and more of this, especially with the increased, what's a good word I can use here? The increase in the AI technology, just how well AI has grown just in the last few years.
Let's make a point, by the way, since we finally got ourselves out of the rough and out of the weeds and onto the green, let's make a point next time of talking about a lot of that stuff as well. I know you'll have other topics. Kevin, we are absolutely out of time. Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
I know. Crazy, dude. Time really does fly when you're having fun. I hope the listeners had as much fun as I did talking to you. Thank you, my friend. Have the best of days and the best of weeks, and I'll talk to you next week, okay?
All right, absolutely.
Maintenance Matters, by the way, is with Kevin Lindsey, the manager of technical service for Travel Centers of America.